you're giving answers that don't show your personality that you've just kind of taken from the internet and you've learned, you memorize them, and you just say them like a robot. It's always good to show your personality, and yeah, having accurate grammar gives also a good impression of you as well.
Does the IELTS website do a good job, do you think, of preparing people for what to expect? Is it a good, do you find it to be a good resource?
It's a good place to start. They have, some pretty kind of basic sets of example questions for the four different areas and things like this. They give you some examples, but it's pretty limited, So if you're doing quite serious preparation and you want to take, let's say, a listening test every week or every few days, very quickly you'll come to the end on the IELTS website. You'll run out of things to use.
So it's more of a here's what to expect sort of thing, just giving you the
It's a good
ideas, but
introduction.
not too intensive. They probably don't want to step on the toes of people in the business of training for the IELTS, right? I mean, that's a whole industry which you're in.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, that probably is correct.
How do you feel about this letter? I'm writing to express my dissatisfaction with my room-mate.
Mm-hmm.
It's one word, right? As you know, we share one room. I cannot study in the room at all anymore if I still stay there. She always has friend visiting and has parties in the room. They make lots of noise and switch on the radio very loudly. For me, this environment is very difficult to study, and I need a quiet room. Even borrows my things without asking. It is very impolite. I request you can give me a new room next term because I have been asked. I have been asked her has parties in other place many times. They still have parties in the room. I really cannot stay in the same room with her. I would be grateful if you could change me a single room. Yours faithfully, Catherine. Thoughts? So they're giving it a 5. The IELTS is
Yeah,
giving it a 5.
that's pretty accurate. I mean, you would say that. Can we see the question first of all? Let's see exactly. That's the first place to start, is to check exactly what it doesn't have a
Exactly
question.
what the question is. Okay.
Yeah. Should be at the top.
Well, I mean,
So if we assume that the question is, write a letter to someone who's in charge of your dormitory and tell them that you have a problem with your roommate and that you want to change rooms. Usually that will come with several steps, several things that you have to include. And, if you miss any of those things, then you'd probably be getting a lower score. But I think the general problem with that, you can see actually, Luke, as we get towards the end, the grammar gets kind of increasingly messy, I would say.
The grammar and the punctuation start to really fall apart. Yeah, I had a hard time reading it, actually.
and that'll be a time question, I think, because we can see at the start that Catherine she's used commas, she's used periods, she's organized her sentences a little bit better. And as she's gone on, and particularly that paragraph that starts, I request, she's probably looking at her watch and saying, oh my God.
Yeah, 3 minutes left.
Yeah. So, yeah, she's just gone like, blah, put whatever I can to make up the time. But there are some grammar problems with it. I think also it is it's verging on too informal. It could be a bit more formal, I think.
It sounds complainy. It sounds
yes.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a official complaint. Yeah,
it sounds like what you'd say to your friend. I've told her so many times, and she's still having parties. That's fine to say when you're having a conversation, but when you're writing, that isn't, and particularly in an exam, that isn't, the way that you should phrase things. And I think something else that's missing, Luke, is vocabulary. So she's used sort of normal daily vocabulary pretty accurately, I think. But to get a higher score, to get a level 7, a band 7, you have to throw in kind of a good amount of higher level vocabulary,
Does the higher
idioms.
level of vocabulary offset the bad grammar? So let's say she said, I have been asked her. She has, let's maybe what would be a
Gatherings,
more
she has
advanced
many
word we could throw in
gatherings.
there? She has soirees in other.
Ah,
Okay, well, let's say she throws in some higher level vocabulary, but the grammar is still not great. Is that vocabulary going to offset the bad grammar and bring up the score, or is the grammar a bigger issue? I mean, is it better to have a really cleanly written, simple daily vocabulary in perfect grammar, or is it better to have not great grammar and some nice vocabulary?
well, the two of them are marked separately. So the examiner's going through and he's deciding on four things: grammar, vocabulary, what's called task achievement. So are you answering the question? And coherence and cohesion, which is kind of how well is it organized and does it connect well together? And so, you could very easily get a 5 for grammar if there's lots and lots of mistakes, and get a 7 for vocabulary, and then
So
in
it
the
does offset.
overall,
Yeah.
yes, it does, yeah. So and then you get your overall score, which is the average. But the question is, which one is easier to achieve,
Oh, it's
or where
definitely
should we?
vocabulary, I think, right? I mean,
Yeah.
use wielding grammar well is a very difficult thing. I'm sure we
Mhm.
both know plenty of native English speakers who, when we see them write, we feel shocked by
Yeah.
how poor their grammar is. I think learning and not learning, but using grammar well is not a thing you can do 8 hours before the exam. But you could cram 50 words the night before the IELTS exam and maybe figure out how to use 6 of them in your composition.
I mean, no, that's true. Like it is a quicker way to get there. Um, but I do also always say that it's easier for the examiner to notice a grammar mistake than it is to notice the lack of higher level vocabulary.
That's a fair point. You're
So
gonna you're
yeah,
gonna leave a stronger impression if you write well.
yes, indeed,
Yeah.
and you just sort of get the general impression is really important for IELTS writing and for IELTS speaking as well. If you're giving the impression that you are someone who is, an interesting person and you have your own independent ideas and you can express yourself well, then the examiner's going to be, if they're deciding between two scores, they're going to feel more favorably towards you and maybe give you that higher score, compared to if you go in and you're like, you look really grumpy, or you're giving answers that don't show your personality that you've just kind of taken from the internet and you memorize them, and you just say them like a robot. It's always good to show your personality, and yeah, having accurate grammar gives also a good impression of you as well.
I'd like to take the IELTS writing exam and uh,
Ah,
initially write it with some advanced vocabulary words, but then scratch them out and put really low level ones, and then sort of dare the examiner to give me a lower score because I crossed them out.
uh,
All right.
well,
Well,
they would.
they would give me a lower score. Well,
Yeah.
screw those guys then.
Yeah.
They are the enemy.